What happens when a woman, accustomed to being invisible in her own life, begins to see herself again? Sarah's journey of rediscovery begins with a simple question from Ethan, a man she barely knows, but whose words spark something she's been missing for years. From quiet moments of reflection to rediscovering her own worth, join Sarah as she takes the first steps toward embracing who she truly is. This is not just a story about love. It's a journey of self-empowerment, a reminder that it's never too late to rediscover yourself. Hi everyone, I'm Jessica, the storyteller on the Adult Women's Tales channel. Here, I'll share stories about love, conflicts, betrayal, and infidelity within families. These stories offer a deep look into relationships and the challenges families face. Stay tuned and explore with me. If you love emotional stories and want to uncover the hidden secrets in families, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss any of our videos. I'm 52 years old, and I've been the type of lady that follows the rules for the majority of my life. Despite all the ups and downs, I remained faithful to my husband, married young, and raised 2 daughters. Even though the world I created grew smaller and less romantic over time, I still believed in the beauty of regularity and in silently adoring it. Love was steady, not exciting, not novel, but just familiar to me. However, something occurred recently that I'm still not entirely sure how to convey. There was no plan. It was meant to have no significance. Nevertheless, it caused me to reevaluate all of my beliefs about who I am and will always be. I never imagined that I would experience such a thing. Don't make the same mistake I did, please. It was one of those dreary, forgettable Tuesday afternoons when time seems to go a bit more slowly. For the 3rd time this month, my car broke down, and my husband, Tom, was stranded in meetings all afternoon. I didn't hesitate to accept his colleague Ethan's offer to drive me home from the grocery store. I had attended a few company events over the years, so I knew Ethan. He spoke calmly and confidently, and he was younger than Tom, possibly in his late 40s. He was the kind of man who held the door open and looked you in the eye when he inquired about your well-being. He always seemed kind and respectful, and although I had never really thought about it before, I was always aware of how his attention lingered, not in an unsuitable way, but longer than most. In the parking lot, we struck up a conversation. His silver sedan was cleaner than I thought a bachelor's car should be, and he volunteered to carry my stuff into the trunk. "Are you certain that this won't get in your way?" As I settled into the passenger seat, I inquired. "No," he said with a smile. "Your house is only 10 minutes away from where I reside. Gives me a valid reason to leave work early." There was a certain warmth and leisure in his voice. I didn't usually feel safe among other males, but it gave me a strange sense of security. Everything had become transactional with Tom: bills, grocery lists, and getting the dry cleaners. I didn't hold it against him. After 30 years, that's exactly what marriage becomes into, isn't it? The light briefly peeked through the clouds as we pulled out of the lot. Warm light filled the dashboard, and I caught Ethan looking at me from the side while his hand was at the wheel. He responded, "You seem quiet." I gave a shrug. It had simply been a typical day. "You are aware of the situation." With his eyes back on the road, he simply nodded without pressing. However, there was something about him that made it difficult to ignore the atmosphere in the automobile. Not romantic, present, just listening. We discussed the typical topics: the weather, traffic, and a just-established bakery on Ale. He told me a story about Tom trying to fix the office coffee maker and flooding the break room, which made me laugh more than I had anticipated. I remarked, wiping tears of amusement from the corner of my eye, "He didn't mention that part." Ethan smiled and said, "I think he omitted the part where he blamed it on the intern." I chuckled once more before allowing the situation to subside. As we entered the calmer suburban section of Maple Lane, the bustle of the city subsided. The homes appeared familiar and secure in the warm afternoon light. Then we reached a stop sign. For a while, we sat around in silence. There was something odd about that silence, as if the moment had taken a breath of its own. Ethan turned to face me, but not in a dramatic or movie-like way, just enough to look me in the eyes. "Sarah, may I ask you a question?" Uncertain of why my pulse felt louder all of a sudden, I nodded. "Ever ponder whether people are still seeing you?" In a location I hadn't been to in a very long time, the question struck me. I repeated quietly, "Seen." He gave another nod. "You are more than just someone's mother or wife. I tried to speak steadily as I turned my attention away from the window and toward the passing houses. "Always," I said. We didn't immediately move when the light turned green. He paused for a moment, as though he wanted me to continue. I didn't. I was unable to. The automobile then slid forward as he softly put his foot on the pedal. It was some minutes before we spoke. The air seemed quieter and thicker now, but my mind was racing. For a while the ride went on in stillness, but not the type of silence that cried out to be filled. It seemed more like something was gradually and carefully developing between us. I pretended to be in awe of the tidy rows of homes and the lilacs in bloom in the front yards, as I sat with my hands folded over my purse and gazed out the window. Inside, however, I was in a completely other place. Like a fallen stone still rippling across the surface, what Ethan had asked me at the stoplight lingered in my memory. "Ever ponder whether people are still seeing you?" It wasn't a flirty remark, or perhaps he had. I was no longer even certain. In any case, I was the first person to look at me in years who wasn't just Tom's wife or the woman who always brings potato salad to the picnic. I looked at Ethan as we turned onto my street. His profile was composed and intent. There was no knowing gaze, no sneer. He had no intention of pushing me. He had just seen me. As he parked into my driveway, I muttered quietly, "Thanks for the ride." He simply idled the car there without putting it in park. "I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable, Sarah," he remarked in a quiet but confident voice. "I'm hoping I didn't." "You didn't," I shot back. Simply said, "I haven't had a question like that in a very long time." He gave me a serious look at that moment, and I felt compelled to use my hands and eyes, anything to help me stay anchored. "I've observed your demeanor," he said. "Something about you is still very much alive. However, it seems like you've been instructed to keep it hidden. Not precisely humiliation, but a flush of realization that I was being addressed in a language I hadn't heard in years caused heat to rise to my cheeks. To that, I was at a loss for words. I simply grabbed the doorknob. He said, "If it's okay, may I walk you to the porch?" Before I could open it, I paused. "No," cried the sensible side of me that handled the bills, made birthday cakes, and reminded Tom to take his blood pressure medication. However, a more subdued but adamant part of myself said yes. Yes, I did nod. The entrance door was a short walk up the path. I knew I would probably do it myself, but I made a mental note to have Tom fix my flickering porch light. The tension between us stretched like fabric as I dug through my bag for the keys, fragile, yet not tight or uncomfortable. "I apologize if I went too far back there," he added, taking a step behind me. I turned to him and repeated, "You didn't. It's simply difficult to know what to do in such a situation." His hands were in his pockets as he nodded. I believe that sometimes things happen simply to remind us that we are still human and have emotions. Once more, it was that cool honesty that made you want to respond, even if it didn't ask for one. I answered, my voice catching a bit. "Thank you." After giving me one more look, he gave me a soft smile. "Sarah, have a nice evening." "Ethan, you too." I stood there for a while with the key in my hand, the front door still shut behind me, as my reality subtly changed as he turned and walked back to his car. The house was dark when I entered. The midday wipe down left a lingering smell of lemon cleaner. After placing my handbag on the counter, I stood in the kitchen and listened to the silence. The moment was not dramatic. In the conventional sense, nothing had occurred. Even though there were no lines crossed or kisses stolen, I could still feel something happening because of the pain in my hands and the constriction in my chest. I was noticed by Ethan. I was unable to unsee myself now. In the quiet nooks and crannies of my daily routine, the days that followed seemed odd, not in a noticeable sense. His question kept coming back to me as I poured my morning coffee, passed the mirror, and folded laundry. Ever ponder whether people are still seeing you? In the most mild way, it plagued me. There was nothing different that Tom noticed. He seldom ever did anything else. We had settled into a phase of our marriage where communication was natural and silence wasn't awkward. I would ask him whether he remembered to take out the garbage, and he would question if I had paid the power bill. Back to back, we slept next to each other, talking primarily about schedules rather than emotions. He didn't make me angry. To be honest, I didn't. However, I began to feel more and more as though I had begun to fade away, first gradually and then suddenly. Then Ethan texted 2 days later. "I hope this doesn't offend you, Ethan, but I'm going out for coffee soon. Would you like to go too? There is no pressure." I spent a lot of time looking at the message. I had the option to disregard it.
Perhaps it should have. However, I didn't. Me? Where? We got together at a tiny spot near the intersection of 5th and Lawson. It was a simple coffee shop with windows that usually fobbed in the morning and ivy crawling up the side. It wasn't sophisticated. In part to feel safe and in part to avoid being noticed, I arrived early and picked a booth in the rear. He appeared shocked to find me there when he got there. However, I was also taken aback by myself. He smiled quietly as he slid into the seat across from me. "I appreciate you coming." "I almost didn't," I admitted honestly, stirring my coffee without adding anything. "Yes." There was a pause. Again, though, it's thoughtful and not uncomfortable. I finally acknowledged that I had been considering what you had said about getting noticed. He listened, leaning forward a little. I suppose I was unaware of how much I had missed it. Just someone noticing, not attention. Someone who sees behind appearances. He gave a nod. "We neglect to take care of ourselves because we are so busy caring for others. Getting lost is easy." I muttered, "I think I got lost a while ago." For a minute, neither of us spoke. Then Ethan remarked, "I don't want to complicate your life, Sarah," without altering his posture or tone. I didn't seek out for that reason. Simply put, I like our conversations. That's all. And it wasn't flirtation or suggestion, but the genuineness in his voice that broke me. Simple human decency. It seemed unusual, holy, nearly. We discussed everything and nothing significant for almost an hour. Our early years, our favorite dishes. When we couldn't sleep, we listened to this song. When the kids were tiny, I told him I would dance by myself in the kitchen just to feel alive. He grinned, as if that were the most lovely thing he had heard all week. We paused once more before getting up to go. That now familiar silence that hung between us like a gentle curtain. "Sarah, if you ever need to talk or just breathe differently for a while, I'm here," he added as he opened the door for me, and I stepped up into the light. I looked at him for a heartbeat longer than I should have, then nodded. "Thank you." That sidewalk was where we parted ways. Don't touch, no assurances, just a comprehension. However, Tom's back was to me that night as I laid in bed next him, breathing steadily and slowly. Something stirred inside of me. Not remorse, not regret, just consciousness. There was a change, and I didn't know what was going to happen for the first time in years. A week went by. I didn't hear from Ethan, and I didn't see him. I also didn't make contact. I needed room to comprehend what was going on inside of me, not because I didn't want to. Like a woman with an unseen inquiry in her pocket, I went about my days. Ethan wasn't the issue, not at all. It has to do with me. Who was I now, and who could I still be? One evening, I remained in the kitchen and repeatedly cleaned the same spotless counter after Tom had gone upstairs to watch the news. In the window, my older, softer, but still there, reflection gazed back at me. Still a person.
I reflected on the me of years past, before the quiet got so loud, before the girls went off to college, before the marriage became ingrained in routine. That woman read poetry late at night, created messes in the kitchen, and danced barefoot on tile floors. The woman was still there. All she did was wait. And for some reason, the barrier I had put up around her was broken by a single question from a man I hardly knew. I told Tom I needed to talk that evening, just like we used to do when we were young, broke, and dreaming. We sat at the dining room table. I gave him a serious look. The man with whom I had established a life, my children's father, my companion. Even now, I said, "I've been feeling invisible." Startled, he blinked.
What are you saying? You don't seem to see me anymore, truly. I don't believe I've permitted you. He folded his arms and sat back. From where is this coming? I paused, carefully selecting my words. From an area of me that has been silent for too long. This wasn't about another man, so I didn't tell him about Ethan. Not because I was concealing anything. This had to do with the woman I had become. I wanted to remember this woman. Tom scratched his jaw, as he always did when he was at a loss for words, and looked down. I suppose I simply assumed we were at ease. We are, I said. But comfort isn't enough for me. I want to experience life once more. Neither of us said anything for a long time, but we were actually together for the first time in years, in a moment unrelated to bills, schedules, or chores. Finally, "What do you need from me?" he asked. "I'm not sure yet," I muttered, "but I must begin to learn." I went for a walk the following morning.
No destination, no makeup, only time, sunshine, and air. I also went by the small coffee shop on 5th and Lawson midway through my route. My feet came to a stop by themselves. For a while, I watched people come and go while I stood there. I went inside after that. There was no Ethan, and oddly, I didn't mind that. After placing my coffee order, I sat down near the window. I took out a notepad that had been inactive for many years. It seemed like a beginning, even if the pages were blank, not of something careless or illegal, but of something essential. I didn't require rescue. I didn't require love or help. All I had to do was remind myself that I was still here, that I remained worthy of being seen. As I drank my coffee and started writing, I also became aware of something else. I had already begun to recognize myself once more, and it was sufficient. That's it for today's story. If you found it moving, don't forget to share the video with your friends and family. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave a comment below. Be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another story. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a great day.